as rough as the Cowboys had it, it was pretty ugly for the Dolphins, to just really never had a chance against the Chiefs. Thoroughly outplayed for that entire football game. Let's start with them. What did you feel like was exposed with Miami here?
One thing, it's always going to be tough for the Miami Dolphins to win playoff games. They have a luxury of playing in great weather down south there in Miami all year round. When Dan Marino got to the playoffs, that was a question mark, and I think it's going to be a question mark anytime. Like, since 2016, the Dolphins are 0-11 in sub-40-degree weather. I believe Tua is 0-6 in sub-50-degree weather. That's not even that cold, man. For a team that is kind of spoiled by playing down there, again, it's not impossible. You know, Tampa Bay plays in Florida, too, won the Super Bowl a couple years back. They had home field advantage, Joe, and they had the greatest quarterback of all time. So it's always going to be tough for Miami. If you're having to go to Buffalo, if you're having to go to Kansas City, and that environment's crazy. It's not easy for anybody to play in Arrowhead. Arrowhead is one of the biggest home field advantages because the fans are crazy, because that stadium was deliberately built to generate noise vertically, like Lumen Field or whatever Seattle's field is called now. Same exact thing is Seattle, built to generate noise, to be loud. And then in these conditions, this was always going to be an uphill battle for Miami because of their team. Also, this defense was severely hampered, severely injured, way beat up. Always going to be an uphill battle. The guy that obviously comes up the most short, though, is Tua Tagovailoa, and I think you have to come away with that feeling.
Yeah.
Carson and I ragged on him all year long, not because we wanted to, not because we're Tua haters, because I just don't think Tua is that good. And I think this was a game that is just really hard for a guy like him to win.
Yeah.
It's not even just the things that we pointed at, Carson. Tua's not extremely athletic. He's not a big play extender. He had a couple scrambles, but nothing crazy. Like, literally, at the start of this game, I think he had the longest run of his season. It was like 12 yards.
Yeah, he hadn't rushed for more than 9 yards on a scramble in the regular season, I don't think.
Yeah, that'll tell you. You know, so he's not a big-time playmaker with his legs and his mobility. And he's very easy to disrupt. I mean, a lot of these in routes, out routes, that's the thing that makes this really hard with a QB with this kind of limited arm strength. You can't even dial up. Think about what the Texans did drawing up things for the rookie C.J. Stroud. Deep concepts, corner routes, posts, crosses, all kinds of crazy vertical routes that you can draw up for him that he can not only read and dissect because he's that smart as a quarterback, he can make all these throws because he has the arm. In a scenario when you're down in a playoff game with Tua Tagovailoa as your quarterback, it makes it that much harder because you cannot get vertical with the football. And I don't want to hear about the weather conditions. Patrick Mahomes got vertical all goddamn game, you know?
Yeah.
It's a Tua problem. It is a solely Tua problem. It is just unique to him because he's that limited as a quarterback. And again, this is a nightmare scenario. When you're in a deficit like this, trailing, you can't push the ball down the field, which does what? Well, you can't run the ball because the clock's ticking down. You got to keep throwing it so you can keep the drive alive. You can't throw the ball downfield, so what does that do? The defense knows that you're throwing underneath concepts the entire time, and they can just wait on them. That happened all throughout the rest of this game.
Yeah.
Tua was on time with his throws, but it's like there's no creativity. There's no surprise. We all know what you're going to do. And the Chiefs have a great group of cornerbacks and defensive backs and one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they were able to easily disrupt him. Like, I don't know if Tua is good enough to win a playoff game. I don't know if Tua is the guy for Miami. I didn't know if I was going to have that coming into this playoff run or after this season because it was a great year for Tua. They got to the playoffs. They almost won the AFC East. It was a successful season. But when you see a playoff game like this and when you consistently see him limiting this team throughout the regular season, I think that has to be your question. And it's not a question for me anymore, Carson. It's a takeaway. I don't think Tua is the guy for Miami. I would explore somebody else, somebody more physically gifted, somebody who can just do more dynamic things with the football in their hands at the quarterback position. And Carson, I wonder if we even overrated Tua by putting him in that top 15 range. I wonder if Tua is a median to below average starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm sorry, Dolphins fans. I don't say this to be mean. I say this to be objective and to be real. I believe this about Tua. I don't think he's that good.
He's not the guy. There are so many overwhelming advantages that this Dolphins team has. They have, in my opinion, clearly a top 2 play caller in football. Like, I think Mike McDaniel is awesome. I think that he creates advantages regularly with his mind, with his creativity, his play calling. And then you have the fastest overall offense that I've ever seen. And you have one of the best receiving duos that I've ever seen. And when it comes down to it, against good competition this year, against winning teams, you average 16 points per game. You go 1-6. In the second half of the game against the Bills, trying to win your division, you produce 40-something yards. In this game, you put up 7 points. Against the Ravens, you get embarrassed on both sides of the ball, really, but that offense was not working at all. So I just don't think there's any more excuses that you can throw out that make any sense. And there are so many religious Tua defenders who I just don't think can come to terms with his limitations. Yes, his accuracy is really good. Yes, his timing is really good when he's throwing to his first read. And when your receivers are this good and your play calling is this good and you're facing a bunch of mediocre defenses, that can lead to some really nice production. But when you have probably the weakest arm of any starting quarterback in the NFL, and when you are a limited athlete and a creator out of structure, totally limited in that capacity, and when you aren't actually great as a processor of the game, moving from one read to the next as things go off schedule, there is a hard ceiling on what you can be. And we have seen that hard ceiling with Tua. So people will try to throw excuses out there and say, well, the Dolphins defense was hurt. You put up 7 points. Doesn't matter. You're not beating anybody in a playoff game with 7 points. This isn't 1972, and this isn't the Steelers going out there. Play calling. I know some people were frustrated with Mike McDaniel. Why do you think the play calling is so conservative? Why is this creative, genius, hyper-aggressive dude all of a sudden just dialing up wide receiver screen after wide receiver screen, slant, everything within 10 yards? I mean, I think Tua completed like 9 passes behind the line of scrimmage in this game because he has no faith in this dude to push the ball downfield because this guy showed him that he couldn't do it, especially in these conditions against a defense of this caliber. And, I mean, the first pick from Tua was bad, just totally floated that ball. The touchdown, dude, their one explosive play of the game was a terrible underthrow. Terrible. Tyreek is just a superhuman. But there was almost nothing beyond the line of scrimmage. And as you said, the Chiefs' entire defense was sitting on that, and they were blowing shit up behind the line. So this offense just had nothing going. They had no faith in Tua. He looked completely overwhelmed. The weather doesn't work for me because, as you said, Mahomes looked great. He looked unaffected by it. So it's not that Tua sucks. Tua is solid. He does a couple things really well. But he will never look better than he does in this situation. This is offensive heaven, and in big moments, he still comes up really short because of fundamental weaknesses that he has. And if you want to seriously contend, this is not a guy that you can invest in at the quarterback position. I'm talking about now that the rookie deal is up. This is not a guy you can give a $40+ million deal extension because paying the wrong quarterback is a fucking disaster.
Hey, Dallas.
Look at the Giants right now. But Dak's good, man. Dak is a hell of a lot better than Tua. I'm talking, look at Cleveland. At the end of the day, the quarterback position is still what holds them back. Look at Denver, just having to cut Russ, deal with all that dead money. Look at the Giants. Like, when you pay the wrong guy, it will inhibit you. And it's not that Tua is going to so obviously hold them back in the regular season in the same way, but when you have Tyreek and Waddle and McDaniel, like, you can just do better than this. And you should gamble on doing better than this because you've seen the ceiling here and it's just not enough. And if you pay Tua, then how are you going to improve this defense that, yes, was absolutely banged up, was down some key guys, but I still think needs to be better if they want to contend. If you're paying your quarterback $40 million and you can't add those key defensive players, you can't pay them. Maybe you can't retain all of your key offensive weapons. I just don't see it. I do not see a world in which this team commits big money to Tua long-term at the quarterback position and they don't end up regretting it down the line. And that's a rough takeaway, but it's something that they're going to have to stomach, and all of the Tua-non people are going to have to come to terms with. Because you're a Dolphins fan, right? You're not just a Tua fan. And as a Dolphins fan, you have to see how Tua is holding you back.
Yeah, and you think about the potential quarterbacks that the Dolphins are going to have to face if they do rock with Tua for the next couple years. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, potentially Aaron Rodgers. CJ Stroud's going to be there every year. Like,
yep.
I'm sorry.
Didn't even mention Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, you got T-Law. I mean, that's 8 QBs. That's more than the entire playoff field. Like, whatever, if you get into the playoffs, you are going to have likely the worst quarterback in the playoff field every single year. Considering that's the most important position on the field, I don't really like your chances of going on a deep playoff run. And like you said, Carson, you cannot give him that kind of money. If you allocate that money to him, you're just losing it on the back end somewhere else. And I would much rather go draft another guy. Go spend that money somewhere else. Go bolster up your team. Go get a new rookie. See if he works. I mean, if that's your choice, either paying Tua or going back to the well and getting a rookie, I'm taking a rookie in a heartbeat.